A critical test failed, a warning sign ignored. Charges this morning that BP knew something was going wrong just hours before the oil rig in the Gulf exploded, but decided not to stop operations, leaving some lawmakers wondering if this monumental disaster could have been avoided. But we begin this morning 4,950 feet beneath the ocean surface for our very first look at the source of an environmental disaster. BP finally releasing these pictures of the broken well pipe that is spewing oil and natural gas into the sea. The black bubbling discharge is oil. The white substance that you see is natural gas just venting out of that pipe. David Mattingly is live this morning. He's in Grand Isle, Louisiana. David, there's this so-called top hat containment box, a smaller box than the one that they dropped down last week, is now on the ocean floor, ready to be deployed. What's the timeline for putting that over the top of the broken pipe?
They're hoping to have that in play sometime today, possibly tomorrow. They've actually got two plans working simultaneously right now. One would be to put that dome, that small dome, the top hat, over that leaking pipe today. If that doesn't work, then they have another plan where they would insert a tube inside that large pipe to collect the leaking oil. So they've got two plans simultaneously ready to go. And this is all because of the failure of that first attempt last week of that massive containment dome. When we look at that video that BP gave us, we're looking at the cloud of black oil coming out of that pipe. This is a massive pipe. It's about 22 inches wide. So that gives you some perspective on how much oil is coming out. But you also see a white cloud of gas. And that gas was responsible for forming those crystals inside the dome and essentially clogging it up. So they're hoping to avoid that problem today as they try this new smaller dome and possibly that pipe if the first dome doesn't work.
David, Congressman Ed Markey yesterday in congressional hearings basically accused BP of making it up as they go along. If the top hat doesn't work, if the insertion of the pipe into the riser doesn't work, what else do they have in their back pocket?
The next planned action here will be in play sometime late next week. That's called the junk shot, where they will essentially be shooting solid matter and liquid, junk, into the piping that they have down there with the intent to clog it up. Of course, BP is taking criticism for everything here, including this idea, saying this sounds like a very low-tech solution to a very high-tech and very dangerous problem. But the plan is to inject that in there, clog up the pipes, make sure that this oil stops completely until they get their wells drilled to cap it permanently.
David Mattingly in Grand Isle, Louisiana for us this morning. David, thanks. Well, right before that oil rig in the Gulf exploded into flames last month, BP knew that there was a problem with the well, but did not halt production. According to California Congressman Henry Waxman, BP officials privately admit that the well failed a critical pressure test just hours before it blew. That test suggested that natural gas could be seeping into the system, which would be a cocktail for catastrophe.
Information reviewed by the committee describes an internal debate between Transocean and BP personnel about how to proceed. What we do know is that shortly before 10 p.m., just 2 hours after well operations apparently resumed, gas surged from the well up the riser and the rig exploded in a fireball.
11 workers on that rig are missing and presumed dead. We called BP to get their reaction to Congressman Waxman's claim. The oil giant says the matter is being investigated and that they won't have any comment until that investigation is completed.
Also, right now, the White House is rolling out a plan to beef up funding for the oil spill relief efforts. Among other things, the $118 million package would compensate out-of-work fishermen and provide additional money to monitor the oil's impact on the seafood from the Gulf. Our Ed Henry is live at the White House. And Ed, how would the White House pay for this?
Well, good morning, Christine. As you know, there's already a tax of 8 cents a barrel on each barrel of oil that oil companies have to pay into a liability fund. The White House wants to increase that tax by 1 penny per barrel, raise some more money, obviously, by doing that. What would they do with the money? $100 million for the Coast Guard, at least one advance to them to help pay for their costs. Coast Guard has been shelling out a lot of money trying to deal with this. Also, you mentioned $2 million for the Food and Drug Administration to take a look at the impact on seafood in that region. I think when you take a step back, though, the big picture here is the White House is watching this story just as we are and seeing that it keeps dragging on. The American people are seeing no answer here to this. So they're trying a full court press to try every angle they can. And, you know, from the beginning, the president on down to his aides have been saying they're going to have, you know, the boot on the throat of BP. BP is going to pay all costs here. You mentioned fishermen, et cetera. But every time we press BP officials, they say we're going to handle all legitimate claims. Well, do legitimate claims, you know, cover fishermen? And they say all legitimate claims. We've seen that over and over in some of this testimony on the Hill. I think the White House is trying to make sure they have some contingencies. They've got some money lined up to make sure they're attacking this from all angles, Christine.
Oh, yeah, and there's no doubt that legitimate claims means two big groups of highly paid lawyers trying to hash out exactly what legitimate claims means. And we're still really early on in this. You know, it's impossible to know quite yet what exactly the full economic fallout will be.